Just want to give it a few seconds. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular meeting of the Ad Hoc Housing Committee. It's February 19th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. I'm going to do a quick roll call. We have Jan Degenshine, Jalen Seed, Darlene Young, and myself, Nicole Eady. We have a few more members that should be chiming in. But right now, we're going to do the acceptance of the minutes from the regular meeting on November 20th, 2025. Are there any corrections or issues with the minutes? So we'll move to approve the minutes. And I know there'll probably be one abstention. So thank you. And one abstention for
I
Jan.
will
Thank you.
abstain. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll make the motion just for the record.
Oh, thank you for making a motion. All in favor for approving the minutes? Thank you. Okay. Michelle, anyone here for public participation?
We do have one attendee. If you'd like to make a public comment at tonight's meeting, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll bring you over to speak. It looks like it's actually City Steps, Sabrina Roman from
Okay.
Fair Housing. So I'm not sure if she's just listening in tonight or
That's fine.
yeah.
Okay, great. And Colin has joined us at 6:37. Hi, Colin. Okay, we'll go into old business, which is the affordable housing account ordinance discussion continued. So I'm going to let Steve or Michelle take it away, maybe give a little quick brief overview for our new members of what's happening, and then we'll just go right into it. Thank you.
Just have to unmute, Steve.
Yes, my first day with Zoom. Thanks, Michelle. So we had some ongoing discussions with the ad hoc committee probably over the last year. And we back in the fall, I think it was probably a few weeks or a month or so before the election, we were kind of progressing on criteria to look at for the adoption of kind of the metrics and matrix for use of the affordable housing funds. That's kind of one of the charge of the ordinance. But since now there's turnover on the group, it's probably a good idea to circle back and get your thoughts on it. And I apologize. I thought the agenda, it was my mistake. I thought the agenda had the last memo, but I think it said the initial memo we were working on. So I'll walk you through that in a minute, just to give you some background. If you're not aware of kind of where this all came from, is as part of the zoning regulations, the city requires that a certain percentage of the units within a multifamily development provide what we call workforce housing units, which are permanently deed restricted units that are rented at a lower rate than the market units. And those rates are set by state statute. In addition to that, we also collect a fee on the construction that happens. And now we've also added some amendments to the regulations for commercial projects where they have to pay as well. And those regulations have been on the books probably since at least 2019, I think is when we started looking at it. And they've been tweaked several times over the years. So we're kind of approaching like the $2.5 million that are sitting in that account. And those monies per state statute have to go towards the rehabilitation or construction of affordable housing. And we've tied that back to housing at or below 60% state median income. So trying to hit at some kind of lower thresholds than the workforce program hits at. So we have this money in the account, and the idea now is, okay, the ordinance put in place, you have to set up a committee that's kind of charged with overseeing how those funds are dispersed, and then also coming up with a mechanism on how someone can obtain the funds. So it can't be, for logical reasons, just can't be as simple as I want to use these funds for a project that has some affordable housing. So what we were working with on the committee that was last looking at this was kind of like a matrix of criteria, at which point that you would grade this submittal to see if it qualified and was eligible for funds. And I'll walk you through it in just a second, but there's a whole host of things you need to consider because, you know, a little over $2 million sounds nice, but that $2 million could get chewed up with one project in a heartbeat. So some of the things we were thinking about is, okay, should we have a cap on the maximum amount any request can receive? Should we only look at certain scaled projects? So like a 50-unit project, is that too big to seek the funds? Should we focus on more smaller scale or missing middle housing as a way to incentivize that scale of development? So there's a whole host of things with that. So I think it might be good. And I know, I apologize, you got this late, so I'm not expecting anyone to give me 100% guidance or direction tonight. So maybe we set a future meeting date, come back. We can talk about it again. And then if you're at a comfortable stage, I can kind of take it from the draft bullet point stage into more of a formal document. And you guys could circle back and provide additional comment. And then, it'll have to go probably get some review by corporation counsel, as well as, I would full city council will probably want to look at it as well, just to make sure they're comfortable with it. And then the other piece of it, as I mentioned at the beginning, is kind of having that committee put together that's going to look at that. And the ordinance has specific criteria on the membership of that committee. And Michelle's been doing some outreach on that because one of the requirements is that you have some individuals that do live in kind of, income assisted housing at this point in time. So we've done some outreach through the housing authority and some other venues to try to get some folks. And I think last year told me, Michelle, were 8 potential respondents, and that will also all have to go through the same vetting process that anybody else that gets appointed to any kind of town body. So it's not just anybody randomly picking it, that those names will have to get vetted by, I'm assuming, the mayor's office and then city council as well. Any questions before I dive into the document? Did I go too quick?
I have a question, Chair. I can ask, yeah. Hey, Steve, how are you? Haven't seen you
Good.
in a
How are you?
while. Just a quick question. So you said we have about 2 mil, 2.5, or how much?
Yeah, in between there, yeah.
And so how often would the coffers be renewed? Like, how does the money flow into that fund? Is it something that's consistent? Is it specifically reliant on development? Just how does that work?
Yeah, so so the bigger projects put in more money, so like the couple of new projects on West Avenue, for example, one of those, the Pinnacle project, that fee was a little over $1 million. So that's a big chunk. So we don't get those scale projects all the time. Typically they're into like some of the newer South Norwalk developments are probably in the range of 150, maybe a little more, $200,000 for that go into the fund. Plus we get the units as well, which are kind of the most important thing. But those funds do get replenished all the time. I just signed a permit today. It was a small project. It was 8 units up on Main Street, and that was $10,000. So it's not a ton of money, but every time somebody does something with 3 or more units, they have to pay into the fund. Or there's a commercial project, they have to pay into it. So it gets replenished, but like I said, it could get drawn down very quickly.
Very quickly. And is it after the projects are done that the money is, or is it before? Like when do
No, we collect the money when they get their permit.
Okay.
Because otherwise it gets,
It gets a little bit, yeah.
I don't want to chase people around at the end of it to pay us for stuff.
Okay. And so does the fund reflect the ongoing projects then, since you said we get them before, that are going on in South Norwalk by the train station?
Yeah, so almost every one of those that have been built or approved recently have paid into that fund. So like the ones right by the train station, Monroe Street, Chestnut, there'll be ones at South Main, the ones on Water Street. Like the like 19 Day Street that was pre that, or the Housing Authority redevelopment of I was going to say Meadow Gardens, but I'm drawing a blank. Just south of Day Street. That project
Western Village.
was pre. Thank you. Yeah, that was pre-adoption of that regulation.
And one more question, Jan, do you mind? I see your hand up. So if we look at the balance we have now, what does that represent as far as development? How far back do those dollars go? Do you know off the top of your head? And I asked that because you remember when we were talking about the MLK corridor, this was one of the funds we were looking at possibly working with, but I don't think we had ever gotten a dollar amount. I'm just wondering how far back this 2 point.
I can get you an exact date because we have that written down, like when
Okay.
the particular code was adopted. But I'd say it's around 5 years. And when it first started, it was much narrower. For whatever reason, when we first adopted the regulation for the inclusionary zoning, it was only required in South Norwalk, and then we were
Right.
like, well, that doesn't really make sense. It should be kind of citywide. If it's not really fair to require it in one area and not require it in another.
Good. Right. Thank you.
Okay, Jan, it's the
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Steve. I think I heard you mention a couple of times now that commercial projects are also included in this, that they have to pay into the fund for affordable housing. Is that correct?
Correct. And that's a newer regulation within the last 18 months. So we haven't had a ton of if we got like a new Walmart, for example, that would be like, okay, great. But it's only new construction. So it wouldn't apply if it was a fit out of an existing space.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I have a question, Steve. Okay, so that's new. So Wegmans, what about Wegmans?
Wegmans was, I believe, approved before. That would have been a nice, yes, it would have been nice, but I think it was before.
Oh, what was our cutoff date for that?
That was, I think, effective February. I think that was when the new code went in February of 2024, I think.
Yeah,
I'll double check on Wegmans.
February 19th, 2024, I believe.
Okay. Today. Almost
Yeah,
so
2 years ago today. Yeah,
today.
it's
Okay. So the new the new building by cemetery, the new development, the store should be coming in there. All of those commercial areas are going to
Yeah.
pay into this fund. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so that project, yeah, that would have paid into it at the time because that would have been required before at the time. So we look at it a little differently. We back out the commercial development and the mixed use, but a standalone commercial would have to pay in.
Okay. Wait, they won't pay the commercial?
No, they
that's
did
gonna
pay.
come in
They
there?
paid.
Oh, they did.
They
Okay.
paid based on the construction value of the residential units. Plus, they provided workforce units in there as well.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. I know the development with the apartment side of it. I mean, like they're gonna have supposed to be I don't know, stores on the bottom level that are
Yeah.
coming. That's gonna be commercial, right? So
Yeah, that was actually before that.
that's all before everything is before. Okay.
Yeah, that was approved in 2022, I think, and they got their permits.
Okay, so anything as of 2024. Okay, that's good. And I just want to give maybe Jan and Colin if they don't have the ordinance, I'll get them a copy of the ordinance. But the members that need to consist of this committee that will take care of this account, it should be 2 common council members, 1 P and Z, the director or designee of P and Z, 1 the chief of community services or designee, and then 3 residents. 1 has to own or rent. 1 has to definitely own and 1 has to rent, and the other one could be either or. So that's what this committee is going to be made up of to handle this account. Okay. All
Thank you
right.
so much, Nicole. I just I wanted to apologize. I'm in my car, so I don't have
That's
the ordinance
okay.
up in front of me. So
Yeah,
that was very helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, and just a note to it. I don't know, that committee's not gonna, I don't think, at least at this point, it's gonna have to meet like on a monthly basis or anything, because I think it'll be as requests come in for funds, like, okay. But unless they get charged with additional responsibilities, it's just kind of more of a PSA than anything else.
Yes, in this committee we've been talking about for so long. I'm ready. I'm ready to be on the move with all of this. I just want y'all to know. So we're gonna get this committee together, and I already got some ideas on what to do with these funds. Okay. All
All right.
right. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Sure, let me just blow this up. Is that visible for everybody? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. So I had a couple notes, and so this was the first draft we kind of started working through, and kind of asking, and I went back and I watched the last meeting of the committee just to get a sense of at least, their thoughts on kind of things. And I got the sense, and you guys may have a completely different position, was they were more leaning towards smaller projects than bigger projects. And I think there's probably a few reasons for that. One of that is like picking up on the first bullet point is, a big project's going to eat up those funds quickly. And also, there is some public pushback on the larger projects. So I think that might be a way of kind of not saying you're incentivizing or advocating for those projects. But again, that's completely up to you. And I picked a number of 20 units. That's an arbitrary number, whether it's 20, 25, or whatever you feel is the right number. And then the section below that is kind of gets into the eligibility requirements themselves, kind of some things that let me just make sure the heading's there. Just kind of saying, all right, if you're going to do a project over 20 units and to be ordered to tap into these funds, you need to, at a minimum, meet these metrics in terms of deed restrictions on the units. And then there's a different metric for developments of 20 units or less. And again, any of these can be modified, or this is just staff suggestion on something to consider at this juncture. And then 3 through 9, again, are just other items that we felt were appropriate. So you don't want to incentivize or encourage development within the flood zone or the CAM boundary if you can. If somebody's in violation of a city ordinance or city regulation, they should probably be discounted from seeking those funds. Also, if they need to get an amendment to the zoning regulations, change the zoning map, or get a zoning variance, that's probably telling you they're not the right project. That, we spent a lot of time over the last 4 or 5 years really doing a lot of land use planning in the city. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. So they shouldn't be in an area outside of where we've already kind of targeted growth and development. Obviously, if they're not paying their taxes, it's not somebody we think we should be giving money to. Making sure that they are compliant with 612 is the workforce housing regulation. So at a minimum they have to be compliant with that anyway. And then again, consistent with the workforce housing regulations, they have to make these units deed restricted in perpetuity. A lot of communities sunset their affordable units, which it's consistent with the statute, the 830G statute, but that doesn't really make sense because there's always going to be a need for affordable units, especially in the other communities that are, our surrounding neighbors, which are much more expensive than even we are. So I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think that's a good strategy to pursue. Any questions on that?
Yeah. I'm concerned about the permanent deed restrictions, and I hear your take on sunsetting those and how it may impact negatively on affordability. But on the flip side, permanent deed restrictions don't work that well for the homeowner per se. And do you think that deed restriction, would a landlord, property owner be inclined? Would they have to follow this? So if they wanted to utilize some of our dollars, does that mean that they would have to have some sort of restrictions on their property?
Yeah, these funds per statute, they have to do that anyway. So there's not, with this particular pool of money, there's not a lot of leeway in that direction. Um, the way the zoning regulations are set up now, that they would have to follow that. I think, we've had this conversation a few times. I think there's probably a different pool of money that we don't have, that we have to think about how to get, if you're looking at like lower, you know, lower cost loans or different programs for home ownership. I don't know if this is the best vehicle for that. I think there's a different vehicle we haven't really dove into yet, and that's a broader city policy, but I don't know if this is the best one to deal with that.
So then these dollars would really be allocated to developments that are already deed restricted, or to someone who, how would that work?
No, these would be for new construction. So say I'm going to build a 50-unit building, and my goal is for, I mean, if someone's looking like a private developer, they're looking to maximize dollars, they're probably not going to be trying to access these funds.
Right.
This is somebody that's going in with a mindset. It would probably be somebody that specializes in affordable housing development now. That I think that's who this is really trying to help. And a lot of times these funds can be used to fill the gaps. Some of these, and I think you had at one of your prior meetings, I think you had, who was the group, Michelle, that came in? Wasn't Open Doors. It was Michelle Condorino. I think she came and spoke.
That's
Yeah.
open doors.
Yep.
Mhm.
Open doors.
Yeah, I missed that meeting, but I think one of the reasons we talked about having them come in was, Michelle and I had met with them on a project they were working on Maple Street, and just going through the different iterations of the funding and how difficult it was to finance these projects, to get them, to bring them up to the quality of the market rate units. If you want to get on that scale, it's really difficult. So these extra funding sources are things that can kind of fill those gaps. But if you're like, Spinnaker and you're going to build a 100-unit building, you're not going to access this program. It doesn't make sense for you, or in the long run. That's why, because the workforce housing program itself, there's two tiers. You have to give 10% of the units at the restricted. You could do the units at 60% SMI and not pay the fee, or you can do the units at 80% SMI and pay the fee. Most of the applicants pursue the 80% SMI because over time they get more in rent for those other units, and it's just more profitable for them over time. So they'll pay the fee, but over time they recoup those funds through the rent.
Okay. Thank you.
And Steve, can I ask a couple of questions? So if they choose the 60%, they don't pay the fee, but
Right.
does the rent increase over time as well? Or
No, those rents are locked at
They
the,
stay-
well, the
they're
rents,
locked
the,
in.
the rents can still go up. That's just, you have to make sure that's a little bit of a misnomer. The rents can go up provided that the SMI goes up.
Right. Okay. Okay. And also we've talked about this before. We were thinking about these funds because it's not a ton of money, that we can use these as some rehabilitation projects. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Repair, and it does in the house, if it's the homeowner or if they have a complex, it all needs to be, if you're a homeowner, how is it considered affordable? Does it have to be considered affordable? How does that work?
Right. So the redevelopment agency at one time, and I don't think they have the program anymore. At least I don't believe they did. They used to have a program where they was like a facade improvement program where you could access funds to fix up, but then they placed a deed restriction on the property. And I don't know if that sunset or if that was a permanent deed restriction. I don't recall. But this would be, I think, yeah. So this is not going to be somebody, probably if they had like a 2-family house and they just wanted to use these for funds to fix up something, probably not the best vehicle, because you're going to have to deed restrict that unit. And then I don't think that's worth it. I think there's other programs out there that are more appropriate for that scenario. This is really the ultimate goal with this would be if I want to build an 8-unit development and I'm more than comfortable with it being, per the affordability requirements that would be in the second bullet, and I can deed restrict those units. And that's my goal, is to build affordable housing, because I'm tapping into other programs that are out there from the state and other sources, but then I need some extra funding to close the gap. That's the kind of program I think that this is targeting.
I have another
Yeah,
question.
we talked about there's so much complexity with affordable housing, and this particular program is not going to solve all of them. It's just really it's one vehicle, and
Right, right. And that's fine. I think every little bit is going to help. But there are homes already that are affordable. And if there is some repair or rehabilitation needed, we could use these funds for that.
right.
Correct.
They could, for sure. Yeah. And then, you'd have to, and part of the, the criteria, then we'll get into down below, is with like
Mhm.
the scoring points. You'll have to look at some of those projects. Because you'll have to make sure it's somebody that's actually eligible and worthy of the fund. So if somebody had like a 2-unit project that needed rehab, and you'll go through the finances and make sure that everything is up to snuff.
Okay.
I'm still confused though, to Miss Edie's point. So even if it's a homeowner, that's a landlord, has a 2-unit, they utilize these dollars. So they don't have to go under any deed restrictions.
No. I think what she said was they have affordable units, unless I misheard what she said.
Yeah, but do they still have to have any deed restrictions on their property to use this money?
To use these funds, yes, they'd have to.
So
They'd have to have
why-
that already. I don't think somebody, if they don't have a deed restriction already, would use this program. I don't think it makes sense for them. But if they had deed restricted units on the property, that might make sense.
Okay.
But Steve, just to be clear, if they don't have any deed restrictions, they would still be eligible to apply for those deed restrictions to have affordable units and apply for funds from this account.
Yes, yeah. So
Even
I
if it
think a
didn't
scenario,
make financial sense for them.
right. And so I think a
Correct.
scenario could be like, say, Open Doors purchased a 2-family house that was just a market rate house with no restrictions on it. And they wanted to fix them up and then rent them out to somebody that, at 40% SMI. But in order to get the rehab up, to, get all the rehab dollars they need, this could be a funding source. But then those 2 units would now become deed restricted in perpetuity.
But they would be deed restricted for that organization as a homeowner, a resident, and I have a 2-family house, and I might want to utilize funds, right? Maybe my tenant falls within the SMI or the AMI, and I borrow money and I utilize these funds to fix up my home, my 2-family home. It's my deed that do I still have to fall under the deed restrictions? Do those apply?
Yes.
So now my home that had no deed restrictions, because I taken on this, fund from this program and have a tenant, my property now has a restriction on it.
Yeah. So in that scenario, this is probably not the fund you
right.
want to see.
That's right. Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to
Mhm.
make sure I'm clear on that.
Yep. Yeah, those are good questions. And it's not necessarily always straightforward. If you're talking deed restrictions, not something someone would take on lightly, I
Right.
wouldn't think.
Right. It's like a trade-off. Do I want
Right.
this? But I gotta.
Yeah,
eat
because
it.
especially if you're talking about doing rehabilitation for something, it's like that's a fairly short-term process versus something which is a permanent restriction on your house. So this is kind of,
Steve, and I'm sorry, Chair, can I ask one more question?
Oh, sure.
Because I think one of the things the redevelopment agency, and the city has done across the city are, first time home buyer projects or developments, right, for income restricted individuals, right? And so a lot of those properties already are deed restricted. And so can they take advantage of these dollars?
Yeah, so if they're already deed restricted, the only thing we would have to check, and that could be something that we modify, again, this is just a starting draft.
Mhm.
But if they fell within number one or number two, like say they're number two and they have a 10 unit project, if their current deed restriction makeup of the units didn't fall within this set of bullet points here, I don't think they would be eligible. But again, these are just drafts for discussion purposes tonight. And then that could be something else you add in there. You could add another clause. Sorry about these pop-ups. You could add another clause about existing deed restricted units could be exempt from that. This could be for just new construction. It's another thought.
Thank you. I think that makes sense because there are quite a few of those properties sprinkled throughout South Norwalk in particular.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Jan?
Yes, whose obligation is it to prove that there's a gap in funding that has to be filled by this project, by this program?
That is in the next section.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where we started out something. So the next section really talks about kind of scoring criteria, and I have it up to about 110 points someone could get. And then this is the first one, which is the largest points, possible 30 points. It talks about the affordability within the project. So we had those metrics up above saying these are the minimums. Maybe somebody does or exceeds those minimums, and they might score higher. A lot of that could be weighted that direction. You could also, what we threw in there is all right. So there's also identified need for senior affordable housing. So if they include more units for seniors, maybe they get some additional points. So what's going to end up happening is someone's going to submit this application. This committee is going to look at this, and they're all going to score these projects and then come up with did they pass or they fail? Or are they eligible for the funds? Next criteria is where that project is located. So they get more points if they're located near transit, if they're near the hospital, if they're near. So for reference, the CD3 zone is kind of Main Ave and the Route 1 corridor, and CD4 is kind of Wall Street through South Norwalk. So that's kind of like our urban core area. So they get more points if they're in those locations. And the idea behind that is that they're less reliant on a car if they live in those areas because there's better transit, there's more jobs in that location, there's more city services, and there's more availability to get access to fresh foods. So they get more points if they're based on those locations. Next criteria really talks about how the building is developed in terms of sustainability. And I threw these out as a starting point for metrics. We're using kind of one of the more recognized criteria, which is the LEED program. So if you build to LEED Silver standard, you get 5. LEED Gold is 10, and that's where I messed this up. This needs to be a 5. Sorry about that. You can't get 15 points if the maximum points is 5. So I got to fix that.
Have you explored using passive house as a criteria?
Yeah, we could do that as well. And then we've done that in the zoning regulations where we've kind of choose your option. And what we've done as well is we've not made them certify as like LEED, silver, gold, or whatever. We've just had to say it's certifiable that way. Because as you know, it's a lot of work and a lot of money to get certified versus having something that's certifiable. Next one talks about, and this gets picking up on, sorry about the dog, if you can hear that. Next one is shovel readiness, which we think is important because it it gets to the viability of the project and the likelihood that that project will actually go forward, because that's something, we are using city dollars, so it's important to make sure that this project is going to happen. So that's why we also put in there something that it's got to begin construction within 180 days of receipt of the funding. And we can adjust that if you don't think that's enough time for them to, we got their approval, now we've got to get the other funding sources lined up and then come up with our final drawings. We thought 180 days was a good number, but again, that can be modified as we go forward. Next one, again, is another criteria where we want to make sure that this, whatever the entity that is pursuing the funds, will be actually able to carry out the project. So have they done this before? What projects have they brought to fruition? Have they done projects of a similar scope? Are they, well versed in all these affordable housing circles in order the funding sources and finishing up on these projects? Again, number 6 is also looking at the additional funding sources and, are they viable? Are they, is the money there? And then next criteria, is this kind of project consistent with what the citywide plan says? They should be able to demonstrate that based on the location of the project. That should be pretty simple because we've kind of outlined in the plan where that development should be. Next criteria, similar, is the project consistent with the Affordable Housing Action Plan? And that's, again, that would be looked at as part of the approval. This was another point, bullet point that I've highlighted. And again, this is something to talk about. And Ms. Young had kind of went in this direction a couple times with the for sale units versus like rental units. And should there be more points weighted if they have for sale units within that project? Another one is if they have family sized units, because that's an identified need that the housing authorities told us about, but it's also in the Affordable Housing Action Plan. It's like we need larger units with multiple bedrooms to house folks because sometimes they get crammed in, so they would get some bonus points for that. And last criteria here is, and this came from Ms. Dunn, who was a member of the committee, that had a good point that, what if if they get some extra points if they're doing a brownfield cleanup in conjunction with that. So that's kind of, you get a 2-for-1, you get a brownfield site remediated, but you also get a development that's adding the needed affordable housing. So that's kind of our first crack at a scoring matrix. And again, I don't expect you to have final thoughts on this tonight, but just kind of something for you guys to consider.
Chair, can I ask another question before you move on to the next section?
Absolutely.
So, Steve, I don't remember us talking about ADUs or where this falls into this at all. If that's outside of the scope, in particular, we talked about where we would prefer to see these developments supported, these dwellings supported, and usually it's in the urban core. But does an ADU fall into that category that's outside of the prescribed area? Because a lot of people always concentrate things in the urban core, but these ADUs have an opportunity to be right in other parts of the city.
Yeah, that's a good question that I didn't think about, but I think ADU would definitely be eligible by itself. Now which is something we could look at. So if they were not, per number 2 is the location direction. The ADUs, if they were outside or they didn't hit all these points, they might not get those extra points. But you could always have a qualifier about an ADU there or give additional points for an ADU. But the ADU would still have to meet those restriction criteria. So
right.
But that's something else. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point.
Thank you. Since we're talking about ADUs, because that was going to be my big thing, my big push. Can you sell, whether you can sell and rent the ADU. If it's deep, it would have to be de-restricted. I know we can sell it as well, right?
Yep.
Get the funds for that and also rent it. If we do a rehab, you still need to go through this scoring here.
Yeah, but I think we want to, I think that's a really good point that I apologize, I forgot who brought that up, but I think you want to not have the eligibility requirements for the,
ADU.
yeah, for the ADUs, but also looking at so if you had the point that was brought up, if you have an existing deed restricted unit and it doesn't
Mhm.
meet those, maybe it's not 30% of SMI or whatever it is,
Mhm.
but they'd still be eligible to use those funds because they're an existing deed restricted. I think that would be something we'd put above in the um, eligibility requirements, that if you're an existing, you're exempt from this because you're already theirs. But I think that's something they could tap into.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Because it just sounds, I mean, do other towns do this scoring?
Yes, they
No.
Stanford does, and I think Fairfield does as well. There's not a ton of municipalities that have this, to be honest with
Okay.
you. Not widely used because when we went through and started working on this, we were doing research on who's doing what elsewhere, and Stanford and Fairfield were a little ahead of us, and they were seemed like the best models.
Okay.
So the other part of this, which
I'm sorry,
was
so
brought
Madam
up,
Chair, sorry to chime in. I'm still on my phone, so I can't really raise my hand.
That's fine.
Just a quick question, and this kind of goes back to the shovel-ready aspect of the scoring. Um, Again, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but is there a mechanism in the audience to claw back funds if funds are awarded to a project that never, or that that takes too long to get off the ground?
I don't. I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance. I don't think there is, but that
I
would be
don't think so.
something we'd have to look at too. That's a good point. I just don't know about that per se. Yeah. So your point is, yeah, if they failed to meet that, say or I mean, a better example might be if they just go belly up and there's no project anymore. We don't want those funds to disappear. So that's something we'd have to look at.
Yeah, I think that might be worth looking at. Thank you.
Yeah, that might be something I can chat with the law department too, if there's a better way to structure that. I don't know if there's a way to like kind of hold those funds until they actually start. And yeah, that's a good question. Okay. So another, and this does touch on that a little bit, talking about the application. One thing I was thinking would be a good idea would be because I don't think we have the in-house capability to look at the financial viability of these projects correctly. So I was thinking that there would be they have to put up some upfront money with us that's reimbursable, where we would have an on-call consultant kind of analyze their financial analysis to make sure that, okay, this is a legitimate project, the funds are here, it makes sense, it's going to pencil, all those kind of things. So that was kind of what we were thinking. So the process would be they submit the application. City staff does a completeness review to make sure it's there. We get this $5,000 application fee that goes to that third party to take a look at the financial analysis. Those monies would go back to the applicant at the end, making sure everything was viable. After the review is done, then it goes to the application review committee, who's going to then go through the scoring criteria, and then they ultimately make their decision. So that I could see that functioning similar to like how the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews an application, that who's ever requesting the fund comes in, makes their pitch, shows their proposal on, here's our project. And then, you guys ask all your questions, or the committee asks all their questions, and then they do their kind of review of the project and score it, and then make their decision. And this is just kind of that broken out in detail in terms of also here's what they would have to submit. We'd come up with the application, which would be based on what was up above. They'd kind of give us a detailed narrative of how the funds are going to be used. provide the financial analysis. They'd have to, obviously submit plans showing where these units are and how what the project's going to look like. Show us how the funds will be utilized and compliance with all the criteria that are outlined above. Also provide all the other funding sources that are going into the project, and then give us a timeline of when it's going to be completed. So all those would get factored in and evaluated as part of the process. And I think that's it for how we kind of had it set up. And again, I know it's a lot to digest tonight. So I think Michelle had sent these out. So my recommendation would be kind of think about this over until your next meeting. We can come back and regroup and kind of go through it again. I'm happy to answer the questions. And I'll make a few modifications based off on some of the comments I heard tonight, and we could walk through those as well.
And Chair, do we have like a metrics of a scoring rubric that says if you score through this or that, you know what I mean? And then if you get a score of 30 means
Yeah, I think we said, I think it says you got to get an 80%.
you have to get 80%. And then if they don't get 80%, are we giving opportunity for people to change, make modifications if they can, within the scope of the work?
I don't see why you couldn't do that. I don't know if that we, to Mr. Holston's question, might be another one. Is that going to conflict with anything in the ordinance that we'd have to check, or is that just something that could be like part of the application?
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I
Go
had
ahead, Jane.
one other
Yes. Sure.
general question. And
Mhm.
that is, I think that this does cover the qualifications for the developer, who will then be compelled to rent at a certain rate or to sell at a certain rate. What is the restriction on the occupant, and how does that fall into place?
So that would still, so right now, all the workforce units are monitored by P&Z. So every year, Michelle is in the middle of it right now. She has to send out an email to all the property owners who have workforce units and say, all right, it's reporting time. So they have to give us a whole slew of documentation, income statements from the tenants, all that has to get verified. And that actually goes up to the state of Connecticut. Is that in August, Michelle, or is that? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
usually in August.
yeah. And so then the state looks at all the information we provide, and then they make sure because it's all tied back to Connecticut statute 8-30G. We
Mhm.
kind of use that as the benchmark, but we target lower than that.
Good.
Anyone else?
So Chair, what's the timeline? And maybe it was already in the notes, for getting the rest of the committee. What's next?
You mean with this, all this information Steve gave us tonight?
No, so we have the formation of the actual committee. Is that the next
Oh,
thing that we
yeah,
have to do?
Now. Like we need to, we really
Are we
need,
behind on that?
I think we
Are we a
are.
little behind on that?
we are.
You
We
are,
are.
but until the application is actually complete, they don't have a lot to, they don't, it's hard for them to do something without having, here's what our job is. I think really the impetus now is on me to get that piece done, and then they have something they could work off of.
And so what does that timeline look like? I'm sorry, I'm eating.
That's fine. It's as quickly as you tell me. So, but I think whenever you set your next meeting date, it would be good to come back, and then before I finalize a final draft, it won't be the final process, but the final draft, I would like just a little more feedback from you guys.
Okay, so you're saying this needs to be done before we have the committee formed?
I think yeah, because the committee can't I don't think the committee can just allocate or should allocate any funds. I mean, they could have a meeting, an organizational meeting or something to understand what they're doing, but they can't really, I don't think it's a good idea if they allocate funds without having these other processes in
Oh,
state.
no, I know that, but I'm just thinking we can't do anything with the funds if we don't have a committee. So that's why I was like, let's I mean, you'll be doing this in the meantime, but we should go ahead and start appointing people.
Yeah, no, I think definitely do that. Yeah, that's makes sense. It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Jalen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I had a question because maybe with the committee, maybe there's a good point before we put the application like fully, maybe we could have like an idea, but maybe it's important to get input from that committee on the application process, just because they are the ones that's going to be reviewing it and they might bring some insight that we might not have as council members. And it might be valuable just to get their insight on it.
And to his point, Chair, I think also there might be an opportunity to do some sort of education, particularly for taking people who are not familiar with the whole process and what it feels like and what we're going to be doing, just like we did. Like we brought
Right.
people in to talk to us. It might be worthwhile just to have those opportunities for them
Yes.
that want it to
Right.
to get an understanding of what this whole thing is, how it
Right.
works for the state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Steve, you guys said you had like 8 people?
Yeah, they would be on the to fill out, and I don't know if they all meet the qualifications or not, but we
Right,
had
to fill out the
eight
resumes.
potential candidates from the residential side.
Right. Right.
I
Okay.
think the other side, like council, will probably be pretty easy for you guys to figure out who's going to
Mhm.
do it. P and Z, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
really the public ones are and I think, even if because if you think about like all the board, every month you guys appoint new people to different boards and commissions. They're going to be people that come and go on the public side all the time. So I don't think you have to have everybody there all the time before you start moving on it.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm like, let's go. So, I mean, it's been a while. Yeah. So so you guys are going to vet the residents side of this, or
I think we could do like an initial to see if they hit what the qualifications are within the ordinance, but the final choosing won't be us. So we can work through you and the mayor's office if that's preferable. That's probably the best avenues. That way
right?
the
Because I
communication's
think it
consistent.
says the mayor needs to appoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And is there any like political party with the residents that have to be abided by in the ordinance? Does that matter at all?
I don't think it said. I don't think that was in there. I better read back through it again, but I don't remember that.
I remember
I don't
Nora
think-
bringing it up, but
I think with our committees, it has to be
okay.
right. Or not the commissions, but the commissions, it has to be like that. Well, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, that's a good question. The minority representation it's hard. You only have 3, so you're not going to get the districts. You probably
Right.
don't want to have them all from one district, but you're not going to get all the districts within that for sure.
Right. So I don't think this ordinance had that. Okay. I got one more idea. And I'll let y'all go. ADU. We've been talking about this. We've been saying, how can we market this? ADUs detached. Could we do like a little pilot program? Let's reach out to somebody and say, hey, you got because we don't have any land, remember? So we're not going to have a lot of projects because we don't really have anywhere to build. Maybe we can offer an incentive tax break for somebody. Hey, can we use your land and build an ADU on it? De-restriction, rent it out, sell it, whatever, and just see how that works. We've just created an affordable housing unit or house for a new family, single person, and see how it goes. Maybe that would make it more attractive to other people to start building ADUs and because we need all types of things we can't just do it in units. We need to have all types of creative ways to start chopping at this housing unit need that we have, right? Just throwing it out there. What you think about that, Steve?
Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah.
Um, Well, I think if you were going to do that, so the ADU piece on the P and Z end wouldn't be the stumbling block. I think if you wanted to do a deed restricted ADU and then provide like a tax, some kind of tax break for them, that would be council just kind of initiative, and then P and Z would follow suit, whatever regulation
Okay.
amendments we'd have to do. But I don't think P and Z would have an issue with that, but you would have to be the guys that kind of push that.
What y'all think about that? I'm just curious.
I would
It's
need a little
interesting.
bit
It's a
more.
thought. I mean, we've been talking about it. If someone's willing to do that on their property, and why not? I just think that the size is always going to be the issue.
Well, they can only be one.
Right,
I think
right.
yeah, and I'm still fighting from the 700 to the 1,000, but I think that's for attached. Detached was only 700 square feet, right? And
That's
the attached was
actually,
1,000.
I think it's actually proposed to go up though.
Okay.
And I'm so happy to hear that. Yes, but I mean that's good. I mean for a starter home.
Somebody's willing to restrict their
Their
home.
property, right?
That's really the key to this.
Right.
Would their house have to be restricted, or just
Probably.
the ADU that we built on the house would be deed restricted?
I would think it's just the affordable unit that would
Right.
have to be restricted, but that
Right.
does encumber the entire property. You can't then sell off your house and let the AD float. So whoever is purchasing your property is purchasing a unit that in memoriam is going to be
Restricted.
restricted. It must be used for an ADU that has an income limit on it.
That is just, we track the ADUs now. They have to give us a affidavit annually to say that the property owners residing with either within the ADU or in the main structure. Sometimes that's tricky for us to track. If we got like 100 new ADUs and it's just, we're not dealing with like a developer who's got 80 affordable units and easy to track down compliance. This is going to be, somebody on Smith Street and somebody on Beacon Street. It's going to be a little harder to track that.
Steve, how many ADUs do we have so far?
Oh, Michelle, do you know? I know there's a lot.
Not off the top of my head. No, I don't know.
More than 100?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because we've had the program for a long time. It was restricted to attached, but the program's been around for a long time.
I think it would be good to know what the average rent price is for the ADUs in Norwalk as well. They may be
Right.
serving as affordable housing, not only as additional housing, but affordable housing. And if so, we might not want to use it as part of this program because we're trying to find as many tools as possible to create affordable units. If they're already inherently affordable, we don't want to mess with that.
My guess is if someone's building new, like a detached ADU, the rents are going to be very high because the
Right.
construction costs are going to me,
Right.
that's like where I love the idea of ADUs, but I don't think they're the answer to it on the detached scale because it's just so expensive to build. So you're not going to get someone, unless someone's building it for like a family member, that's a different scenario.
Right. So, but attached. Okay, so I lived in an affordable unit years ago, and it was attached to a home. It was a whole apartment upstairs and downstairs. So I don't know if her house was deed restricted. I don't know, but it was attached. So what are you saying? She would have deed restricted her whole house?
No, I think if someone like they say they've got a 2.5 story house and they decide they're going to finish their basement and make that an ADU. I think that if they wanted to try to, the city ever put a program together to, give a tax break on the ADU, I think the ADU would have to be deed restricted, not the rest of the
Not
house.
the whole house, right, right. And if they sold the house,
They
that's
get
still
they
attached.
they get the market. Yeah, they sell it for whatever they sell it for, but whoever rents that unit has to meet the income requirements for the ADU.
Right. And it's still extra income for the person who bought the house, right? And they
Right.
know that up front what they're buying.
Yeah, and you hope that transfers with the, that's picked up with the property sale, because sometimes those things get missed in the
Right.
deeds. That's pretty common.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council?
Just one concern with that. Like if someone is buying like a property for like a market value, and then they have a deed restriction on it where they can't get like the full value of something, um, the full like market value of it, then I think that might be a hindrance to like the homeowner to sell, because nobody will really want to buy something that they're not gonna really get the full value of it because especially like if you think of like now, like say if somebody purchased a house in 2018 for a certain price. Now that the house price went up drastically, their mortgage is going to be a lot more expensive. So for them to make more money on that accessible unit, they're not going to be able to make as much money. So it'd be a hindrance to them. And that's where I see where it might not be appetizing to a homeowner to do it, because when they go to sell it, they're going to have a hard time selling something for full market value. They're going to have to sell it at a discounted rate because they have this kind of deed restriction on it.
But if the deed restriction is just on the ADU, not on the main, so say they've got a whatever 2,500 square foot house and a 800-foot ADU. If the deed restriction is just on the ADU, the house should still have full market. I would think it would, especially in this housing market. I would think it would. I mean, and there's nothing, I think, in the future. If you did the tax, if you gave a tax break on that, I think you'd have to have some, to Mr. Holston's point, you'd have to have some clawbacks too. So it's like if somebody decided there's a new buyer in 3 years, and they decided they didn't want the ADU anymore. They just want to convert it into a big playroom or something, whatever they do. And they got a tax break on that. Would they be liable to have to pay that back? That's something you have to think about.
I wouldn't think so, because I would think that while they're renting it, they are renting it at the affordable rate. So the person benefited from it, during the time that they had it.
You do have a deed restriction on your property now that you have a unit and that unit must be affordable. The language here is very important. Can you then
Mhm.
erase that altogether? Then you would have to
Mm.
add all the plumbing and all of the other benefits of having a second unit. You do that. It does limit or put some limit on the market for the house. If somebody wants to have a single family residence and they do not want to be encumbered by any kind of an ADU, and the property is deed restricted, they're going to have to have some way to work that out, or they're just going to walk away and look for another property that isn't so restricted. So there are little glitches that I think have to be. I don't think they're deal killers to the program, but I think that they have to be looked at.
Yeah,
Did they
each individual person that was going to pursue this would really need to probably have a good financial advisor and a good attorney saying, well, wait, did you consider this? Here's going to be the ramifications down the road.
Could there be some type of like buyout, or like if you stop renting your apartment and you want to break your lease, you got to pay? You say, I don't want the deed restrictions no more. Okay, then you got to pay. I don't know. I'm just thinking. Gotta make it work. I don't know. Y'all all set. What you think about that?
I'm sure somebody's done this. We're not the first community to grapple with this, so I'm sure there's a test case out there somewhere where you could figure something out.
Okay. Well, is everybody any more questions or concerns? Well said. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve and Michelle.
you.
You guys worked so hard. I appreciate y'all. And I appreciate everyone for showing up tonight.
Thank you, Chair.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Do we have to
Great
take any
potential.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Miss Young, motion to adjourn.
Good
Thanks,
night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.